Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Anna and I'm a product marketing manager here at Smartsheet, and today we're going to review our top 5 tips for optimizing your sheets. Smartsheet recently released improvements to the way that sheets work, enabling you to work in larger sheets with faster performance. So you'll see all of the details on my slide right now, but we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to go over all of our best practices and really surface all of the full functionality that you're going to find in a Smartsheet. To see all of the functionality in action today, we are going to be using a template set that you can find to download in the Smartsheet Solution Center. As you're getting started, the Smartsheet Solution Center is going to be a great resource for you. This is a place where you can get started with a blank sheet or find templates and template sets for the work that you're going to be managing in Smartsheet. All the way from, of course, project management to being able to search by your role or by your department to find the exact template that you'd like to get started with. To find today's template, for those of you that are joining us live, there is a button towards the right of your screen to download it, and anyone who's catching up on our webinar at a later time can search for client implementation to locate our template set. Our first tip for optimizing your Smartsheet is to make sure that you're customizing the structure of your sheet. And this is going to be true whether you're importing an existing Excel file or MS Project file that you've already worked on and are turning into a Smartsheet, starting from scratch, or starting with a Smartsheet template or template set. Once you do this, make sure that you have columns appropriate for your type of data, so using the date columns and the contact list columns, as well as incorporating visual columns like symbols and check marks. You can also organize the work in your sheet by incorporating hierarchy, which is the ability to indent rows to organize your project by phases, organize your work by status, and more. We're going to get started with the implementation timeline sheet that's found in the Smartsheet template set that we downloaded. In this sheet, you're going to see a few examples of what I just mentioned. So starting with our primary column, which is the column with the bold name, this is also the column where we're able to provide that structure that I mentioned. So instead of working off of a single list of tasks that your team needs to accomplish, you can start really organizing and focusing on your work one phase at a time. For example, I'll come into this sheet and I can indent several rows using the indent buttons at the top of the page. By doing this, I'm able to collapse and expand, and I can provide multiple levels of indenting. So you'll see I already have a few levels of indent created. And for those of you who have downloaded this template already and have this sheet in front of you, you'll see there are 3 or 4 different levels already built in. You'll also want to make sure that anytime that you're assigning tasks, you're working in a contact list, and you can do that by double clicking and ensuring that contact list is selected. This is going to offer fuller functionality. So when you start enabling resource management to see how much work someone has assigned, or when you're ready to start sending out reminders or alerts to users about the work assigned to them, having this set up as a contact list instead of just a text column is going to offer all of that functionality for you. Similarly, the date columns that we have in our sheets are going to actually power some of the different views in your sheet. So instead of using a text column when you're indicating it's a date column, again, by heading into that column property, you're telling Smartsheet this is the type of data we're going to use to power reminders about tasks. And if we head up to the top of our page, this is also going to power our Gantt view and show all of our work on a horizontal timeline based on the date columns that we have in our sheet. Lastly, this also powers our calendar view, allowing us to see all of the work that we have on a calendar. And we can, of course, select a simple month calendar or choose the timeline that we're looking for here. When you're adding a new column to your sheet, you will see several different options that we haven't talked about yet. So I recommend incorporating symbol columns to make sure you're really communicating visually. You can also incorporate an auto number system column, which is a long way of saying this is a column that Smartsheet is going to automatically populate for you. And if you are adding rows to a sheet with a form, auto number is a great way to assign automatically, so each row gets a unique identifier. Or you can even capture when a row was added, when a row was created, and who added or created a row. This is going to be really helpful for you to identify what information is current and what information is stale. I'll go ahead just to show you how this looks. I'll add a created by row to my sheet, and you will of course see that all of these rows were created by me, but it's a great example to see as you're collaborating with a lot of different people, this is a way for Smartsheet to capture that information for you. I'll go ahead and hide this column for the rest of our webinar just so we can focus on each of these tips one at a time. So to review some of the areas that we looked at in the sheet for really making sure you're getting the most out of your sheet structure, making sure that you're incorporating the right type of column for the data that you're working with. So whether it is adding a contact list column to assign work, date columns that are going to power your timeline views like a Gantt or a calendar view and set us up for reminders, or incorporating symbol columns to really visually communicate to you information that might otherwise blend into a really black and white text-heavy sheet. Our next tip as you're getting going with a Smartsheet is to really use that sheet as a single source of truth. And this is going to take place in a couple different locations across your sheet. Regardless of whether you are managing projects, working on content, whether you're an IT team or a design team, you're going to always be working in a sheet, but also have files that may live on your computer, files that may live on cloud storage like Google Drive or OneDrive. And of course, we're all going to have conversations about the work that we're managing, whether it is through messaging, in person, on the phone, or of course in a lot of remote meetings. With all of this information being exchanged in different places, it becomes hard to remember what lives where or who owns what. I know I have personally spent a lot of time in the past trying to figure out where a file might be saved that I need to complete a specific task. The narrow columns that you're going to find on the left side of any of your sheets are going to help you really use Smartsheet as a single source of truth for your team's work. And this means that whether you are coming into Smartsheet to update or to understand status and assignments, or whether you want to find information related to the tasks and the work that you're doing, all of that is going to either live in or be connected to your Smartsheet. Each of your sheets is going to have an attachments column as well as a conversations column. We're going to start with the comments column, and this is going to be a great place to have a lot of those conversations you're otherwise having by chat or by phone and really leading to tribal knowledge. And this makes work a lot harder because anyone who might be out of the office or recently joined your team or people who are leaving your team are going to have information in their inboxes that you can't find in your Smartsheet. Instead, if I have a question or if I want to specifically reach out to someone on my team to discuss the work that we're doing in Smartsheet, I can select any of the rows in my sheet, click on the Add a Comment button, and simply have a conversation in Smartsheet. And on the right side of our page is where you'll see these conversations get threaded, just like you would see in other collaboration tools. I can simply add a comment or take notes, or I can actually even mention my coworker to send them an immediate notification to ensure that they know that there's a conversation happening here. As your team gets in the habit of using these comments to discuss the work in the row assigned to the work, you know that anything that you need to know will be found in the sheet in this specific row. Similarly, if there are any attachments, so if you have files or documents or even websites that are related to a task that your team needs to accomplish, you can simply attach that to the row. And whether that's coming from your computer or whether you're linking to something that might be in Google Drive or OneDrive, this allows you to find the task, click on the attachment, and have all of that accessible to you quickly and easily. So no more going to Google Drive, trying to remember the name of the file you need to search for, or looking on your shared network drive, trying to remember how it was organized or what folder it lives in. If I need to add a new file, I'll just select Attach File, and you'll see the various options I have here. Attachments are a great way to have this information available in a single place, but I know for a lot of the work that we're doing, it's not finalized yet. So you might have contracts, you might have images, files that are really works in progress, and you want to make sure that they're being reviewed as well as approved. For that, you can enable proofing, which is an additional narrow column that gets added to the left side of your sheet. To do this, over in our right panel, select the proofing button that I'm hovering over right now. And as an owner or admin on the sheet, you can go ahead and enable this functionality. As I do that, you'll see a new proofing column is added, and this column allows me to upload files and actually ask for reviews on them. You'll see I can attach a file directly from my computer, and when it's available, I can either @mention a coworker, just like I've done with my comments previously, or use the request feedback button to actually send my file to someone to annotate with comments, request feedback, and also add additional versions of the work that we're managing in proofing. So to review the different elements of the sheet that we've worked on here, we can use our comments to have conversations all in Smartsheet. We can attach files, whether it is documents, or even in my case, I'm attaching large webinar recording files to the work I'm managing in Smartsheet. Or if you have something that's a work in progress and you want some commentary, you would like users to review and approve it, you can enable proofing to go through that process in your sheet as well. And this is great for images, for contracts that you might need to redline, or for other types of work that you're managing. By moving these adjacent processes, so the conversations and the files, all into your Smartsheet, not only can your team count on a single source of truth, you know that you're not going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on and where the information you need is. It's all going to live in one place and really help you get the most out of your Smartsheet. After you've started to really move all of this work into Smartsheet, and as your sheet grows, especially with our new larger sheet sizes, our third tip is to make sure that you're still able to focus on what matters in your sheet. There are going to be a few aspects that are going to help you really focus on the information that's important, the information that's new, and the information that you really need to act on. We're going to start by enabling the Highlight Changes button at the top of my sheet. And Highlight Changes is a really helpful option to incorporate when you're collaborating with other people and you want to make sure that you can stay aware of what is recently being updated in a sheet. This is commonly overlooked because all the sheets that you work in typically have a manual highlighter button. What this does is it automatically highlights the information in your sheet that has been changed in the last day, hour, or dedicated time period that you indicate. So when I toggle my highlight changes on, what you're going to see is that I can either highlight anything that's been updated in the past hour. And you can see, for example, over on the left side of the page, we have conversations that have been added, which we just did in the last few minutes. Or I can select in the last day, which lights up my entire sheet because this is a new one that I've created. or I can even indicate since I last viewed this sheet. And this is my own personal preference. This is going to be really dynamic. This means whether I'm on a week-long vacation and I haven't looked at this sheet in 7 to 9 days, or maybe I'm looking at this sheet every hour and I want to make sure I know what's recently been updated, highlight changes will do that for me. So in my sheet, anyone I'm collaborating with that makes changes, it's going to get highlighted. And similarly, if I'm working in the sheet and I change my status, you'll see that cell is highlighted until I revisit my sheet. Every time I refresh the sheet, anything that's new will have that highlighter applied. When something does become highlighted, you can go ahead and right-click and select View Cell History to actually see the running history of any changes that were made in that cell, really allowing you to keep up with all of the collaboration happening in your sheet. If you want to highlight information, but based off of other criteria, so not necessarily based off of when it was last updated, that's when it's time to start incorporating conditional formatting, which is located right next to our highlighter button. Conditional formatting allows you to add rules to your sheet, and this can be used to color code something that needs action, like an at-risk task, color code something that's completed, so turning it green, or we can add new rules to color code by team, by status, by person it's assigned to, and so on. Our template that you download comes with these two rules, and there are two different ways to actually format the information that you're representing. The taskbar section at the bottom here is going to format the Gantt chart or the calendar view or the card view. So it's not going to highlight the cells that are in your sheet with this formatting. The paint bucket here is how you get the actual rows and cells that are in this sheet to follow this same formatting. So for example, I can tell Smartsheet color a row red, and I'll make it a little bit lighter if it is at risk. And similarly, let's go ahead and color it green if it's already completed. And you'll see in our background here, I already have some tasks that have turned green, and if I flag something as at risk, it'll immediately turn red. The highlight changes and conditional formatting we've looked at are ways to add color, but you're still really looking at possibly a very large sheet. And this is where the filters at the top of our page come in. The sheet that we started with from our template already came with a single filter, but you can of course both create and share filters with others on your sheet based on any of the information. So I can create a filter to show tasks assigned to the people on my team. I can create a filter to only show tasks that are not complete, to show tasks that are at risk. Really, any of the columns in your sheet can be a sheet filter. Over our first 3 tips, we've talked quite a bit about collaboration, but we haven't actually shared our sheet with anyone yet. And I want to mention here, for our 4th tip, collaboration can be done in a variety of ways. A lot of the time when you're first coming into a sheet, you're going to click the share button in the top right, enter in the email addresses of your coworkers or the people you'll be collaborating with, and they can access that sheet anytime to make the changes that they need. Real-time collaboration, you're driving that single source of truth idea, and that's going to apply to a majority of the work that you're managing. There are, of course, scenarios where you want to collaborate, but you might not want to share your sheet, or you might want to collaborate in a controlled way. Forms are going to allow you to intake information, so to collect rows into your sheet without sharing the sheet itself. Automation is going to allow you to send or request updates to the data in your sheet without actually needing to share your sheet. You can send automation to someone who does have access to your sheet to ensure they know when certain actions are taking place, or you can use it as a way to collaborate with someone who doesn't have access to your full sheet but might need to be reminded or might need to update some information in just a few of the rows in your sheet. Here in our sheet, I'll make sure to point out the share button that's in the top right, and this is where you can type in an email address and assign a level of permission. When you share a sheet this way, anyone who signs into their Smartsheet that you have shared with will see the sheet and can take action, so either view or make updates anytime that they need to. And this is the best way to ensure that you have real-time collaboration and everyone's making updates as they're doing their work. We can also power automation with a lot of the information that lives in our sheets. Now, as you can see from our drop down here, there's a lot more to automation than we're going to be able to cover in this webinar. And over in the right side of our page, in the resources section of this webinar, I've linked a couple help articles that are going to dive deeper into the areas that might interest you. What I want to talk about is really how to use automation to collaborate more effectively and really to collaborate with anyone on the schedule you need to get the right information into or out of your sheet at the right time. The template set that we're using already comes with 2 rules. Our first rule is an at-risk alert, so anytime that our at-risk column becomes flagged, we're going to notify someone. Our second rule is a rule based on assignment. So this is a great way to save yourself some work. Anytime that a task is assigned, we're going to automatically notify the person that's been assigned to that task. Automations are really set up in 2 steps. You have a trigger, which means what has to happen in your sheet to kick off this automation. And then you have the action, and that means what kind of automation is this? Are we sending a reminder or are we sending an alert, which means FYI, this happened in your sheet? Or are we sending an update request or an approval request, actually asking the recipient to make a change in our sheet? These are going to be the primary ways you're using automation to collaborate, but automation can also be used to automatically lock or unlock rows in your sheet based on changes, and to even move rows from one sheet to another based on the triggers that you've set up. As a quick introduction here, you'll see that our trigger is saying anytime that our assigned to column changes to any value. So any changes in that column, we're going to then go ahead and send an alert to the person who is assigned to that task. And I have the ability here to also customize my message and let them know you have a new task assigned in our Smartsheet. I can send these automations to users who are shared to my sheet, which in this scenario, I would probably make sure that they have access to this sheet because I will also want them to make updates to the status and to keep track of any of those conversations or attachments we looked at. If I need to, I can absolutely have these automations sent to users who are not assigned to my sheet. This is a great way to share tidbits without sharing your entire sheet. Any of the automations that are being sent out will always show up in the notification center over on the right side of our screen, and to any other methods that a user might have set up. So as a default, we're going to notify everyone with these automations by email, but you can always head into your personal settings and really set up how you would like to receive these. And this also includes integrations with Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts Chat, and Workplace by Facebook. Automation is going to allow you to share or request information about the work you're already managing in Smartsheet, but there are a lot of scenarios where you want to request information or allow users to add rows to your sheet without sharing the sheet itself, and also by defining the information you need. So you're not getting incomplete information and having a lot of back and forth to get the data that you're looking for. For this, we can create a Smartsheet form, and we can actually see a form that's already built in the other sheet that came with our template set, the one called Implementation Team Handoff with Form. In this sheet, our sales team is going to be submitting any of the client implementation work that's already been sold but hasn't yet been kicked off. And this sheet comes with a form available at the top of our page. Forms can be shared with anyone, and they're used to submit a row into your sheet. So this is a great way to manage any request process. If you are an IT team and you need a way to handle tickets, you can create a form. If you are a design team and you have a lot of work coming in, forms are a really great way to manage that work and to intake it because you're defining the information you need up front, and you're going to reduce a lot of those requests that tend to reach you by email or by chat. So you're really having all that information come into your sheet with exactly one place to track all of it. If you'd like a deeper dive into forms, so to really understand how to build these forms, how to share them, and also we recently released conditional logic, so showing certain questions based on other responses in your form. We're actually hosting a webinar all about forms next Thursday at the same exact time. And I will make sure that we include a link to register for the forms webinar in the follow-up email that'll be sent after today's webinar. So to review our fourth tip here, collaborate with anyone. There are a lot of additional options for collaboration, either by creating a form to intake information and then act on it, or using automation to send or request updates to your sheet. By driving collaboration in a variety of ways, you're going to really help with that idea of using Smartsheet as a single source of truth, as Smartsheet can ask for updates on a recurring basis, remind people of tasks, and really get them acclimated to the idea that all of the work we're managing lives here in our sheets. Now, we've focused heavily on the actions and the collaboration that can take place in our sheets. So my last tip is going to be to take the time to understand your work. A lot of us are so busy day to day, really completing and accomplishing all of this work that we're managing, that we don't take the time to think about our goals, maybe except for once a quarter or once a year when we have those conversations with leadership. Make sure that you are using the different Smartsheet functionality like sheet summary, formulas, and dashboards to really communicate the information that's important and ensure that you're tracking your progress towards goals over the course of the year so you can adjust as needed or update your processes to be more efficient and to accomplish more. Starting back in our implementation team handoff sheet with form, you'll find that on the right side of our page, in the sheet summary section, we already have information built in here. You can have a section to explain what the work is that's being managed. You can incorporate formulas to keep an eye on everything that's in your sheet. So, for example, here we're tracking how many tasks of each status, and even formulas to calculate the dollar figures that are going to lead you to accomplishing your goals. We have this set up in our sheet both for the implementation team handoff as well as the implementation timeline sheet that we've spent most of our time in. In addition to using sheet summary and formulas to really understand your high-level metrics and how you're tracking to goals, creating a dashboard, so taking that next step outside of your Smartsheet, is going to really help you communicate how you're tracking and visualize a lot of that information that you have in your sheet summary. So in the dashboard that comes with our template set, you'll see we've taken this opportunity to really introduce who our project managers are, track our tasks and revenue, and include helpful links to any files, agreements, or other Smartsheet items. We can also embed Smartsheet reports or reports with Gantt charts, or even incorporate forms into our dashboards, really making sure all the information you need is in one place here, provided visually, and taking that step outside of our Smartsheet. Now, Today was a top 5 tips webinar, and I know we covered a lot in a half hour. So I want to take a moment to review our top 5 tips for optimizing your Smartsheet and also make sure that you have all the resources you need. So starting at the very top, if you're getting started with a new Smartsheet or importing a sheet or using a template or template set, always take the time to customize the structure of your sheet. And this can be as simple as making sure you have the columns for the data you need, or incorporating specific column types like contact lists and dates, visualization with symbol columns, or capturing information with system columns. Also, indent and really organize your work to create that hierarchy, allowing you to really focus on one element of your work at a time. Our second tip is to align on a single source of truth and really take advantage of the various ways that you can have information in your Smartsheet. So not just updating cells, columns, and rows, but also having conversations, sending @ mentions to your collaborators, and attaching files or even uploading and reviewing documents as part of our proofing process. With all of this work and collaboration going on in your sheet, make sure that you're still able to focus on what's important and really surface the information that you need. And you can do this by highlighting recent changes in your sheet, setting up conditional formatting rules to really make the things that are complete or at risk or even assigned to certain people pop with color coding, and incorporating filters to really focus on the rows that you need to be working on at that moment. Throughout all of this, really at the core of all of these concepts is collaboration. Most of the time, you're going to collaborate by sharing your sheets, reports, and dashboards directly, and those users can sign into Smartsheet and collaborate on your work. You may need to have information either reach your sheet or be sent out of your sheet without sharing the entire thing. And that's where you can create a Smartsheet form to intake information or intake requests. And you can use automation to send reminders, send alerts about important changes like at-risk tasks, and even request updates or approvals. So sending a row and having someone just update that row instead of sharing your entire sheet. Lastly, as you are working in Smartsheet and you have all of this work going on, especially with our updated, larger and faster sheets, it's important to take a step back and really think about the work that you're managing at a high level. So incorporating formulas, taking advantage of that sheet summary, and making sure that you're always keeping an eye on what the goal is and how you're tracking to those goals, and visualizing that information by adding the important elements into a Smartsheet dashboard. Don't forget to visit the Smartsheet Learning Center at smartsheet.com/learning. You can search for any information. So if you want a deeper dive into automation, just search for it, and we have a couple videos and step-by-step instructions to help you out. We also offer ongoing webinars that you can find at smartsheet.com/webinars. And our next webinar coming up on May 14th is all about creating dynamic forms with conditional logic, which is actually recently released. So I encourage you, if you haven't yet, please join us next week. At smartsheet.com/webinars, you'll always see all of our webinar topics listed, offered in various time zones, and webinars we've held in the past are over here on the right side of our page. And this is a great place to find webinars about building those dashboards that we talked about, creating forms, collaborating with proofing, or even a deeper dive into formulas to help you take advantage of that sheet summary section. Now, we've reached the end of our webinar today, and as always, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope to see you next week as well.